Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Hopefully, everyone is doing fantastic today. How are you guys? Melissa, I missed you guys too. Thank you so much. I feel like it's been forever since I've been live on YouTube here, but I am back and we're ready to go today. Just putting a new sanding band on my arbor band. And you guys notice that I'm not getting my trainer hand ready. If you guys saw on our Discord channel today, I did post that I'm going to be working on myself today. So let's come in a little closer. So I've actually redone my right hand. So this is kind of the look that we're going to be transitioning into. But for today, right now, I've got our Synergy hard gels on my natural nails here. And today I'm just going to do one of them for you guys. But I'm going to take the Synergy hard gel off. We're going to completely remove that and we're going to replace it with one of our full cover almond tips. And we're going to also be using our tip and Jewel adhesive gel. I know those of you that are loving this gel, I know it's out of stock currently if it hasn't been brought into stock already. But if it's not back in just yet, it is coming in very soon. So just keep an eye on the website if you're needing some of that. And you guys, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I am in desperate need of it as well. So I'm getting kind of down in the bottom of my container here as well. But Elizabeth, you didn't get your text notification. You guys make sure that you do subscribe to the channel and make sure you set your notifications through YouTube to make sure that you do know when we are going live. If you haven't gotten the one from Young Nails, the text message from Young Nails, it's possible that it will get to you eventually because we've got now so many people on our channel that subscribe and get our notifications that it does take a little bit longer to get them all sent out. But hopefully you will get that notification. But again, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on all of that. All right, let's see. What else is in the chat? Anything else? Any questions so far? I think we're good. So let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, we're going to be using the full cover almond tips today. But what I'm going to start with before I actually get to those tips is we're going to get the cuticles cleaned up on my nail here, and then we're going to remove my gel that's on here. So I'm just going to start by just gently pushing back the cuticles. Now, you guys, you can see, let me come in a little closer. You can see I've got quite a bit of kind of dry, flaky cuticle that's still stuck onto the nail. I'm not going to really take a whole lot of time with my cuticle pusher to try to clean that up. We're going to clean that all off when we use our electric file. So I think that's one of the times where a lot of times people tend to waste time is they try to spend a lot of time really trying to clean up that cuticle and get in there and they scrape and they push the cuticle back and they use cuticle solvents and all of those kind of things. So you guys don't worry about trying to get all of that cleaned up. We're going to do that with the electric file. Now, before we file the nail off, because we're going to be changing this nail out completely, we're going to take all of my glitter off, all of the hard gel off, and we're going to switch to a full cover tip. So we're going to remove all of this product, and to make that easier, I'm going to start by just using my toenail clippers and clip off my free edge. Now, when I clip off the free edge, I always want to make sure that I'm looking from the back side of the nail to make sure that I'm not going to cut down into the hyponychium. Now, if I can, I'm not sure if I can get in even closer there. So you guys, you can kind of see, let me grab my orange wood stick. You can see right down in here, my hyponychium has kind of grown up a little bit, and I want to make sure that I'm not cutting down into that. You can actually see on my middle finger here, my cuticle or my hyponychium, that has grown quite a bit up. On my ring finger, I actually don't have much hyponychium growth. That's actually pretty far down there, so I don't have to worry about that on my ring finger. But on these two fingers, I do know that I always have to check and make sure that I'm not going to cut into those. Now, the reason that hyponychium does tend to grow up a little bit more, normally if I don't have enhancements on, my hyponychiums just look fairly normal like this. They haven't grown up. But as some of my nails get longer and kind of heavier on the end, that hyponychium does tend to grow out with that natural nail, so it helps to basically support that extra length. So again, I'm going to leave that hyponychium how it is. I'm not going to try to push that back or anything, but I am going to be aware of that when I trim off my free edge here. So I'm going to trim off, I'm going to come out just a little farther. I'm not starting all the way down there because again, I don't want to cut into that hyponychium. But I always leave just a little bit of space there because sometimes your tip may crack in a different direction than you're expecting it to, and we don't want that nail to crack down into that hyponychium. So I just took one snip on the one side, we'll come over to the other, snip the other side, and we've got that free edge removed. So that's less filing that we're going to have to do to remove the rest of this product. Now let me grab my dust collector. And we're going to turn the dust collector on here. And I'm going to use my, let me see, I'm going to use my Safety Bit Coarse. So let me grab that here real quick. So the Safety Bit Coarse, when I'm working on myself, I really like to use this one because it has that rounded top. So it's a little bit safer to use for myself because I don't always have perfect balance on my own nails. If I'm working on somebody else, I've got a little bit more control of, let's just pretend that this is my client. I've got a lot more control of how I move their fingers, but when I work on myself, I only have control with my right hand. I can't really control the left hand. So that's why I do like to use the Safety Bit instead of, say, the X-Cut bit. They're both the same grit, but the Safety Bit has that rounded top. So if you are somebody who's new to electrofiling or maybe just new to doing nails, I would recommend starting with that Safety Bit Coarse because that's going to be a little bit easier to work with. Now we're going to turn our dust collector on. Got that cranked up to 10. I'm going to turn my electric file on to about, I would say about 14, between 14 and 16,000 RPMs. Because I've got gel on, I'm going to keep it right around 14 to 15. And we're just going to start to kind of pull that bit all the way through. Now, as I work on myself, you're going to notice that I do things a little bit differently than I would when I'm actually working on a real person or even on the trainer hand. But when you're working on yourself, things are a little bit different. You're going to be working at some different angles. You're going to be working in different kind of directions. So as you're working, just notice that it's not always going to be exactly the same as when you're working on a real person or a client. So I'm just going through, let me actually adjust my camera a little bit here, get you guys a better view. Okay, I think that's better. So I'm kind of coming, I was going across the nail, right down the arch. I'm not going all the way from side to side because I can't see where I'm filing here. So I just start from the center, work out to the side, and then I'll look more down the barrel or kind of at the surface of the nail and work through there. Now, let me come in nice and close so you can see I've started to break through that glitter that's on the surface there, and I do have a layer of clear gel underneath there. So I know that once I break through that glitter, I have that protective layer of gel. So after I break through the glitter, I stop filing in that area. So I'll only work in those areas that I have glitter still. So you'll see that as I work, I do move from one area to the other to remove that glitter. And then once that glitter is gone, I work in a different area or I move my bit so that I'm not still filing over that same area. And I always leave that little bit of extra gel under there as kind of a protective layer so that I'm not damaging my natural nail. And guys, again, it's kind of tricky, especially over on my right side here, to really get that cleaned up. So I do tend to turn my finger in some strange angles and work in different directions than I normally would on an actual person or my trainer hand. Now, at this point, let me dust my nail off here really quick. You can start to see there's a couple of areas that I did break through that base layer of gel. So I really want to make sure that I'm avoiding those areas in particular. But I don't want to go too far down to that natural nail, but I do want to remove as much of the gel as possible because I'm going to be putting on a full cover tip and I don't want that extra thickness underneath. Now I can use my e-file here to kind of shorten up that free edge a little bit, but again, I want to keep in mind where my hyponychium is. So if we take another look here, You can still see where my hyponychium is. I have a little bit of free edge that I can take just a hair shorter to get almost down to that hyponychium, but I don't want to cut into it. So again, just kind of taking that as short as I can without touching that hyponychium. Now at this point, I'm going to switch my bit. So we're going to take that safety bit out, and I'm going to switch to my Diamond Cuticle Square bit. So I'm going to put that one in, and I absolutely love using the Diamond Cuticle Square to work up around that cuticle area. Remember how I said all I do is just gently push back that cuticle? I don't spend a lot of time trying to clean that up with my cuticle pusher. It's because of this bit right here. This one is going to really help to clean up that cuticle area. And this I turned my speed down to about 5,000 RPMs. So with this bit, I'm going to come right up around those sidewalls and then up into that cuticle area. Just gently removing that protein growth that's on the nail. And I think this bit is actually an older bit. So this one's a little bit worn down. So I'm going to switch and I'm going to grab a different one, because I do want to make sure that I've got enough grit to that bit to where it's going to do the work, but it's not going to damage my natural nail. And a lot of times I think when you're using an older bit, you may feel like you have to use a lot more pressure, and that can actually cut down into that natural nail. So you want to make sure that you are using a bit that is new and that is going to do the job, and it's going to do that work really easily. This one I can tell is working much easier because I'm really not putting any pressure on the nail. I'm basically making contact with that bit and then just kind of feathering around the cuticle area. And this one is removing that protein growth much, much easier. Once I do that, then I am going to switch to my sanding band. And this is a brand new one. I did put a clean one in there to start, and I'm just going to make sure that that is all the way down on there. I'm going to turn my e-file back on, and same thing, we're going to come up around that cuticle area. I have just a little bit of separation of my product down on the sides here, so just kind of feathering through there, up around that cuticle, back down along my side, and then I'm just going to feather my bit all the way through that whole natural nail, or that whole nail that we're working on here, to make sure that I've removed the shine. And this is also going to help remove any last little bits of product that may still be on here. Now, I am kind of keeping in mind, you see where, let me grab my orange wood stick here. I do still see those areas where I have removed the product. So I am going to be aware of that, and I'm going to stay away from those areas so that I don't overfile that natural nail. But again, trying to remove as much of that hard gel as possible, because we're going to be applying a tip on this and we're going to be using a soft gel. So I like to really remove as much of that old gel as possible before I put on a new kind of gel. So if you're switching from, say, a hard gel to a soft gel, or if you're switching from gel to acrylic, you do want to make sure that you're removing as much of that product as possible. Now notice I'm not just taking my bit and grinding away on the surface. I'm kind of doing a feathering motion. So just kind of a tap, 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 tap. And that's how I'm going to be removing that product without causing any heat on my nail, any burning. Somebody in the chat says, does it hurt? You guys, I'm doing this on myself. So if it hurt on myself, I wouldn't be doing it. So I promise you, if you are using your electric file properly with proper techniques and proper bits and proper speeds, you won't have any issues with it hurting or burning or anything like that. And you'll be able to completely remove all that product right down to your natural nail and move on. All right, I've got just a tiny little bit left up in that cuticle, so I'm going to go back to my diamond bit one more time. I just really want to make sure that my cuticle on the side here is nice and clean. And sometimes this edge is my challenging edge, so I may have to go back to it, or may turn my finger at a different angle or things like that. But when you're working on yourself, it's okay. You're gonna find what works for you. You're gonna find what angles work good for you. So just go with it. All right, let's turn our dust collector off. And then I will grab my file and I'm just going to kind of shape up my nail just a little bit. I'm going to use our 150 file buffer combo. So it's got a file on one side and then it's got the buffer on the other. And I like to use this one just because it's kind of a one-stop shop. You got the file on one side, the buffer on the other. So I can straighten up my nail, shape it up a little bit. And then if there's any frayed edges, you can kind of see underneath there's a little bit of a frayed edge. Then I can flip over and I can use that buffer side to smooth that out. Now I want to make sure I'm not smoothing out the top surface because we're going to apply our gel to that, but we can smooth out that free edge so that there's no frayed edges or rough edges on there. All right, I'm just going to dust off my nail at this point. Dust off my hands a little bit too. So we're going to dust that off, get all of that dust out of the way. I'm not going to cleanse this just yet. We're going to size out our tips first, and then we'll cleanse the nail. Because as I'm sizing the nail, there's maybe a chance that I'll get more dust or things on here. So I'll just wait until I'm done sizing my tip to really cleanse that and prep that nail. Now, when we're working with our almond tips, we've got size 0 to, so we got our size 0, you can see that right down on the bottom. And then so that's size 0 is our largest. And then we've got our size 9. Let's see, you can kind of see that. The sizes are going to be right down in the point of the well. So 0 to 9. And I know that my pointer finger does tend to be right in the middle. So I'm going to grab, let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to start with a size 5 just to see, and then we'll kind of gauge from there. If you're sizing out your tips, I always recommend checking several different sizes to make sure that they're the proper fit, because sometimes one size is going to feel like it fits really well, but then you go to a different size and that could fit even better. So always check a couple of different sizes just to make sure. So what I'm looking for when I size out my nails, the first thing I always check for is the C curve. And what I mean by C curve is the curve of the nail this way. So right from sidewall up to the arch and then down to the other sidewall. So if we're looking at our tips, it's going to be the view from this way. So again, from sidewall up to the arch, down to the other sidewall. So that's our curve. I don't know why they call it a C curve. Now, if they held it, let's see, which way does the C go? If they held it this way, then I can understand the C to it, but that's just what we call it. So that's our C curve. So we're going to check our C curve first, make sure that that tip fits on there without hanging off the sides too much and without having to really squish this tip down on there. Now this one fits pretty okay, so I don't feel like I have to really squish that tip down on there. It does look like it's going pretty well from side to side, but if we look on this side, it's just a little bit short on the edge here. Do you see how it just kind of, it's not quite covering right through here? So to me, that's actually going to be way too small because we're going to be using gel to adhere these tips, and gel is a little bit thicker than just a regular nail glue. So we want to size our tip just ever so slightly larger than you think you should to make sure that you've got extra room for that glue. So I just want to check which size I have. Again, that was a 5. So let me check a 4, and we'll see what the 4 looks like. So the 4, that one still fits my C curve really nicely. Now if I look from side to side, so if I look all the way from this side, looks pretty good on that side, and then if I look all the way over to this side, I tell you, it still looks just a tiny little bit like it's not quite covering. So I'm even going to go one size bigger. Now, as you're going to a larger size, you have to make sure, again, that it's fitting that C curve, but it's not hanging off the edges too much. All right, you guys, this one is actually looking just about right. Okay, and I'm curious as to what size I used on my pointer finger. I think I probably did use a 3. So if we take a look at this one, you're going to notice it's going to go from side all the way to side. It's not hanging off excessively, and it does fit my C curve. Now, you guys, if you take a look, not sure if you can even see this on the camera or not, but there's just a tiny, tiny little gap between that natural nail and my tip, and that's actually okay. Actually, you can see it from this side a little bit better. You see underneath where that natural nail is, and there's a tiny little gap between my natural nail and the well of the tip. That's okay because again, we're going to be using our tip and jewel adhesive, which is a little bit thicker, and that's going to fill in that little bit of a gap. So the tip and jewel adhesive is going to work really well for those nails that they may not fit exactly perfect to the C curve or maybe even a little bit flatter. It's going to fill in those little extra gaps underneath there. Now, I think we're gonna choose this one. So I'm gonna set my other nails off to the side, but I do want to show you guys what can happen if you go extra small. And I think that's tends to be something that people like to do is, so this size is a size 7. And if I set that on there from this view, it actually looks like it fits really well. Now, whoops, let me grab that and drop that one. If I were to shift that all the way over to the side here, so if I bring that all the way down into my sidewall down here, and I look at the other side, again, that is missing quite a bit. So that is definitely too small. The other thing that I have to be aware of is if I'm really having to force that tip down onto my nail, I'm going to go even a size smaller. Let's go grab a size 8 here. All right, hang on. Oh, there we go. Okay, so if this is a size 8, I would really have to squish this down on there and really kind of press out that C curve. So if you're pressing out that C curve and you're putting a lot of pressure on there, what can happen is it's actually going to want to pop back up. So you have to make sure that you're not really pressing down that tip onto the nail, that you're really fitting that C curve so that it really looks exactly like that natural nail C curve. Okay. All right, I hope that all makes sense because when you're sizing out your tips, you do want to make sure that they are as close to the shape of your natural nail as possible. But sometimes, so this was the tip that, oops, I keep dropping it. This is the tip that I chose for my sizes. And this one is a size 3. But if it were maybe a size that felt a little bit larger and maybe kind of hung off the sides a little bit, you can take your file and you can file a little bit off of those edges. Now, I don't need to file off anything from my edges because this tip does feel like it fits really pretty good from sidewall to sidewall without hanging off. But where I do need to customize is up around my cuticle area. And you can kind of see that it's really, it's a little bit, the tip itself is a little bit wider and a little bit more square right through here than my natural cuticle area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that 180 file buffer combo again, and I'm going to round that out. So just taking a little bit off of those corners, so this is going to fit a little bit more up into my natural cuticle area. So this way it's going to fit a little bit better. It's not going to hang off those edges, and it's going to, I always say this, you guys, it's going to fit more naturally. Now, I know it's not a natural nail. I know it's an artificial tip, but it's going to feel like it's right up into that cuticle area. And let's see, W2 Splinter says tips should feel like it's hugging but not squeezing. That's a great explanation. It should be hugging that nail. It should be comfortable on that nail, but it shouldn't be putting pressure on those sides and squeezing that in. W2 Splinter, thank you for saying that. That is exactly what we're looking for here. So it should be hugging the nail. It should be comfortable on there. There shouldn't be a whole lot of a gap, but it shouldn't be pushing in on those sides and really squishing and squeezing in on those edges. So yes, great explanation. And you guys, I love seeing all of your chats and comments in the chat and the things that you guys have to contribute, because I think this is what makes our community so amazing, is everybody being able to share information, and that's why we're here. So make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you can stay part of our community here and contribute and share information and gain information. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. All right, I think I'm going to take just a little bit more right off of this area here. Just kind of flatten that out a little bit. And let's take a look at that and see how that's looking. And it really is important to customize these to really make sure that they are going to fit as best as possible. Now, does it have to fit 100% perfect? No, because once we get this on, I'm actually going to do a little bit of filing around this back area to kind of just blend that in. So blend it in a little bit more so that it looks more flush down to the natural nail. So once more, just removing that extra around the edge. Okay, I think that looks a little bit better, a little bit more customized, so it's not gonna look like a press-on nail here. We're not doing press-ons, but we don't want it to look like a press-on. Now at this point, this is where I'm gonna use my swipe. And swipe is our cleanser. I'm gonna take a little bit of this, pump that onto, let me unlock the top there, pump that onto my manicure brush. And then we'll go through and just give that nail a really good scrub. And what swipe is going to do, this is going to help to remove any of those excess little dust particles. That's going to help to take off any of the surface oils from the nail. And it's also going to help to kill off any germs or bacteria that's on the nail. So we want to make sure that this nail goes nice and dry. You can kind of start to see it now. It is starting to dry. We want to make sure that it does go back to more of that chalky, dry look before we go on to our next step. Now, next step is protein bond. Protein bond is our bonder, and it works kind of like a double-sided tape. So let me come back out. So this is not a primer. It's not going to etch the nail surface, but it is going to leave a tacky surface for our product to adhere to. So I'm going to take a little bit of protein bond. I don't want to just lift the brush out and flood all of that product onto the nail. Do you see how there's almost a drip right there? It's almost going to drip off. What I want to do is I want to tap off some of that extra so I'm not flooding it onto the nail. And then I start right in the center, brush out to the sides, and then I brush back towards that cuticle area. Now, I kind of wiggle my brush just a little bit, get that up into that cuticle area, and you want to make sure that you're getting as close to that cuticle area without touching. So if you do get product on the skin, first of all, anytime you're working with any kind of a nail product, whether it's a non-acid bonder like we're using here, or any kind of other gel, glue, acrylic, anything, you want to make sure that you're keeping that product off the skin. Over time, if you constantly are getting that product on the skin, touching that skin, it can start to overexpose your skin to that chemical, and that's where you do start to get those issues with contact dermatitis or allergic reactions and things like that. So by staying just a hair length away from that cuticle, not touching that cuticle, that's what's going to help keep your skin nice and safe. Now, you guys can see that I do leave, let me come just a little closer here. I leave just that tiny little hairline space, and it's almost the width of an orange wood stick. Let me clean off my orange wood stick here. So if you take a look, it's almost the width of an orange wood stick. So the tip of that stick. So that way I know for sure I'm not coming in contact, okay? And I do use 2 coats of protein bond when I'm working with our tip and jewel adhesive. I think 1 coat is probably fine, but I personally like to use 2. Now, those of you that have been watching my live streams for a while now, you've noticed that I usually would go through and use my sanding band to remove the shine. I'm going to show you another trick today. We've been kind of playing around with some things, and even though protein bond is a non-acid bonder, it's not a primer, it's not going to etch a surface, so it's not going to put texture to a surface. But what I'm finding is that if you use a coat of protein bond in that well, you don't have to go through and etch the surface or remove the shine from the surface with your file. You can just put that coat of protein bond. So it's going to be much easier, and you're going to have a much more clear look to that tip. So you're not going to see any scratch marks from using that electric file. So it's something that we've been kind of working with and kind of testing out, but it's definitely working really, really well. So yes, Crystal Glitter Bug game changer. It has definitely been a game changer for me. So you guys, if you try this technique, let us know how it works for you. Melissa says I've been doing this too. Absolutely, you guys. That's awesome. So I love to see that. So anytime we do have new products, there is some kind of, sometimes you have to test certain things out and try new things. And this one has definitely been something that's been working for us. So we've got our tip ready to go. We've got my nail ready to go. I've got my tip and jewel adhesive here. And I also have, let me sneak back out here. I also have my Touch Cure light. So this light it's just a little mini curing light. And if I turn that on, you can see that I don't have any gel on here, so it's not going to cure that. But you can see that light does come on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my tip, and then I'm going to set my finger under the light and use my other hand to turn that light on and off. This is your power button basically, and then you have that timer to count down, but it is a touch sensitive, so you can turn that off and on from underneath. Okay. Audrey Lopez says you forgot to prep the tip. That's exactly what I was just talking about. We've found that, let me show you guys this one more time. We found that with the protein bond, you can use the protein bond rather than, whoa, don't spill your protein bond. Oh, you guys, that could have been a big disaster. Now, hold on one second. Because I did have that opened up a little bit, I had a little spillage there. I want to make sure to clean off that protein bond so that my bottle doesn't stay sticky. So you guys, it happens. Things like that happen. Just make sure to clean up if you do spill. But yeah, what I was saying is that with the tips, we have found recently that instead of using your e-file to etch the surface of that, you can use your protein bond and do a coat of that protein bond all the way through the well of that. Not going to etch it, but it is going to give that really sticky surface for our gel to adhere to. So it's kind of a game changer for us here. So, all right. So we've got our tip and jewel adhesive, and I'm going to also grab this is our dual brush and spatula. So it's got a brush on one end, and then it's got the spatula on the other end. I'm going to use the spatula to scoop out a little bit of our gel. And you guys, you can see I am running low on my tip and jewel adhesive. So I'm going to just kind of scrape from the bottom, get a good amount of that onto the spatula. Now, I have seen people take their tips, and Greg does this too. If you guys see his videos, he'll scoop in and scoop out some of that gel onto the tip. Especially when you get down to the bottom of your jar like this, it's a little bit trickier to do that. And I personally find that I have a little bit more control of where I'm putting my adhesive if I use my little spatula. So it's a personal preference. You can definitely use that scooping technique, or you can use the spatula, whichever one works for you. But I'm going to set my gel right down into the well of that tip, slide that back towards the cuticle area, and then I'm going to use the edge of my spatula to just bring that out to the sides. Now I'm not bringing that gel all the way to the edges. You can see that I'm leaving just a tiny little space, so just a tiny little gap right through those sides right here. Whoops, there you go. So right through there. And the reason for that is because when we put this tip onto the nail, what's going to happen is this gel is actually going to kind of squish down, and it's going to spread a little bit out to the sides. So if I had product all the way to those edges, chances are some of that is going to squeeze out the sides. So that's why I leave just that little bit of a space right around that edge. Now let's start with our application. And when I put this on, I'm going to turn the nail from the side so you can see. I'm going to start at a slight downward angle, and I'm not going to put it right at that cuticle area. I'm going to keep it just a little ways in front. I'm going to set it down and then slide it back towards the cuticle. That way, if any of my gel does squeeze out the back end, I'm not going to get that onto the skin. So I'm going to just touch here, press down, slide back, and then I'm going to rock that nail all the way down onto the free edge. So let me show you from this view. Actually, let me readjust my camera, make sure you guys are able to see a good view of this. So same thing, start a little ways away from that cuticle, touch down, and you'll notice how that gel connects. You'll be able to see that under the tip. So it's going to connect, and then I'm going to set that down, put a little bit more pressure, and then just start to rock that nail down towards the free edge. Now you'll see as that gel connects to that natural nail, actually lift this up and back that off a little bit. I really want you guys to watch. See how the gel kind of disconnected right there? You want to make sure that you're holding that or pressing that down until the gel connects all the way down to that free edge. And you can kind of check your sides here a little bit, make sure that those are connected nice and evenly. And then also see up around that cuticle area where it almost separated a little bit. I'm just going to use a little bit of pressure to set that back down there. And here's the great thing about this tip and jewel adhesive. When it's on a natural nail like this, you can put that tip on and you've got time to really make sure that that nail is nice and straight. You can adjust it if you need to, and it's going to stay there. And then once you have everything, oops, sorry guys, there you go. Once you have everything where you want it, once everything is in the right spot, that's when we're going to turn on our touch cure light and we're going to set this into place. So again, I've got my touch cure light. I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to do one more check, make sure everything looks good. Just want to make sure that's secure down on my edges. This one I'm going to hold for just a second on the side while we get that under the light, just to make sure that everything is holding on where it's supposed to. Now, when you're working on real people, I would recommend keeping your light about 6 inches away from the nail. You can still see that it's under the light, but it's not right up under here. If you were to put that nail right up under here, you're going to start to feel a little bit of heat on that nail. And if you're that close, it's probably going to be a good amount of heat. So you want to make sure that you're keeping it, like I said, about 6 inches away or so, just to make sure that it is going to set that into place, but it's not going to have that heat spike when you're curing it, okay? Once you've had that in there in the light for, I would say, up to 20 seconds or so, then if you're working on a full set, you would go on to your next nail. Adhere that next one, freeze that into place with the touch cure light. Adhere your next one, freeze it into place with the touch cure light. Once you have all of those nails on there, then you're going to go into the full UV LED, and that's going to cure for a full 60 seconds. So I'm going to get my hand into the light for a full 60 seconds. And in the meantime, we'll close up our gel. You want to make sure that you don't have your gel or any brush or spatula or anything near the light, because you don't want it to cure in the jar. So always make sure that you do close up all of your gels before they cure in the light there. And you guys, I'm trying to do this one-handed and it's not working very well, but that's okay. All right, once this nail is done curing, we're gonna check it and just kind of do a little bit of customizing. Now, when we do our customizing, you could go back to that 180 file buffer combo, and I really like to use that. We're also gonna use our e-file, and I'm gonna use that sanding band. So the same sanding band, let me come in a little closer. So that same sanding band that I was using to prep those nails, that's what we're gonna use to just customize right up around the cuticle area. So at this point, our nail's on there, it's cured on there, it's not going anywhere. Now, something that you guys kind of have to be aware of is when you're putting that tip on, remember how I was kind of pressing down on that free edge all the way until that gel connected? We don't have a gap now at that free edge, but if you had too much of that gel underneath there, actually you can see from underneath there, it did fill in that little bit of kind of that gap in between my natural nail and the tip. But if you have extra gel that maybe squeezed out a little bit more, if you grab a lint-free wipe, let me grab one here. Now, I don't have a lot that's squeezed out, but I still want to show you this. If you have some of that gel that did squeeze out, grab your manicure cleanser and take a lint-free wipe, take a little bit of that manicure cleanser, and just come underneath there to clean off if there's any little bit of a tacky residue on there. There's just an ever so slight residue with the tip and jewel adhesive. It's not much, and if you don't have a lot of gel that's squeezed out, you should be just fine, but it's always a good idea to just kind of clean underneath there just to make sure that there's no tacky surface, okay? Now, here's a couple of little odds and ends to think about. You want to make sure you're not using swipe, or you also don't want to be using onto the next or an acetone polish remover on these tips, because these are just, they're plastic tips basically. Swipe does have a little bit of acetone to them, and acetone will start to kind of break them down. That's what we would soak these off with if you wanted to remove them. So you want to make sure that you're not getting any acetone on these kind of in excess, all right? But I am going to show you a trick with some acetone around our cuticle here in just a second. But before we do that, I'm going to go through and shape up my nail a little bit. I feel like it may be just a little bit wider than what I want my nail to look like, so you can customize them a little bit. So I'm going to take that in on the side, taper it in just a little bit. If you need to, kind of make that a little bit more pointy at the end, but always go around that free edge, that point area, because there's usually just a little tag from how the tips are manufactured in the molds. So always make sure to kind of smooth out that little tag at the end. And then you can check on your sides, make sure that everything is coming out nice and straight from those lower arches. And if you had your tips sized out correctly, you shouldn't really have a whole lot of work to do, but you may have just a little bit of customizing to do once that nail's on there. And we're going to take a look, make sure everything is nice and straight and even. Look around there. Now at this point, let's see if I can show you guys really close. You can see a little bit of the edge of the tip. Now I'm going to go in with my E-file, like I was telling you earlier. I'm going to switch out my bit to my sanding band. And we're just going to kind of smooth that out a little bit. So I'm going to use my sanding band right up around that, kind of that ledge. So almost like we were prepping the surface of that natural nail, just doing those short feathering strokes just to remove that ledge. So now I'm not going to have anything that's going to catch. Maybe just a little bit more right around there so that I'm getting that tip so that it's nice and flush down to that natural nail. So again, I don't have any ledge or anything I'm going to catch on my hair or anything like that. So just really quickly around that edge. Now, here's the trick with the acetone. And I actually just saw Greg doing this on one of his live streams, and I thought, how did I not think of that earlier? But guys, again, this is why it's a great thing to join us in all of our different live streams. Greg teaches certain ways, I teach certain ways. All of our team, we all teach a little bit different, and we all have some really great tricks and just little odds and ends that work for us. So learn all of these different tricks. But the trick I'm going to show you is that if you come in and look really, really close, I still have just a little bit of a ledge of product right around the edge there. If I take my onto the next polish remover, and again, this is an acetone-based polish remover, I'm just using a little art brush. I'm going to pump a little bit of that onto the next, onto my brush. And looks like I had a little paint in there maybe. Okay, so just taking a little bit of that acetone, running that right up around that ledge. This is going to help to soften up that ledge of product or a ledge of the plastic tip. And then I can go back with my E-file one more time. Oops, turn my speed up about 5,000 RPMs. And because that acetone has just slightly softened up that tip, I'm going to be able to get right up around there and really blend that out. So this way I'm going to have my tip flush down to that natural nail, and I'm not going to have to worry about any kind of a ledge to catch on. So another just really quick and easy tip that really makes a big difference. And you guys, there's so many little odds and ends that are going to make doing your nails or doing your clients' nails much easier. And that's why we're here. We're here to teach you guys. We're here to teach you tips and tricks and how to do better nails and faster nails and easier nails. So at this point, depending on what you want to do to finish the nail, most likely you're going to apply some kind of a gel or gel polish. And if you're going to apply a gel or gel polish, you want to make sure that you go through and completely remove the shine from that whole extension. So this way our gel polish is going to adhere really well. If you just left that shiny surface, chances are your gel polish is going to tend to peel or separate from that tip. So make sure to go through, remove that shine all the way through. If you need to, you could use that 180 sponge buffer. I actually like to use the larger sponge buffers if you're going to use that to remove shine, but make sure that you're using a brand new one. Don't use one that's really worn down, because you want to make sure that you are putting a little bit of texture, a little bit of we'll just say texture to that nail surface so that you're not creating too smooth of a surface. Because again, your gel polish, if you put a gel polish over this, is not going to want to stick to that shiny surface or that smooth surface. All right, I think we're good there. And let's see here. Let me grab my brush. We're going to dust off this nail. Get all of that dust off of there. And then we'll go through, and if you need to cleanse the nail, we'll go back to the Manicure Cleanse. Because remember what I was just telling you about acetone. Swipe does have a little bit of acetone to it. And if we try to use the swipe to cleanse the nail surface at this point, swipe having that little bit of acetone is going to give us a more smooth finish, and again, kind of defeats the purpose of removing the shine. So we're going to cleanse with our Manicure Cleanser. This is an acetone-free cleanser. So we're going to use a little bit of that on our brush and just go through and give that nail a scrub. Now, you don't necessarily have to clean it unless you have natural nail showing through in the back. And if you have that natural nail showing through, then you do want to make sure to cleanse this. But otherwise, it's not 100% necessary. Okay. All right, you guys, I am going to ask for your vote in our nail today. So you saw on my nails on my other hand that I did finish up. I have two different colors. I've got one of our cream clay colors. This one is called Tackle. So that's that sparkly teal color. And then I also have Magenta 101 from our Manicure color on my ring fingers here. So you guys, I want to know, let me know in the chat, do you want the teal or do you want magenta? Just let me know in the chat. I was going to say put stars or something. Nah, just let me know, teal or magenta. And let me know which one you want to do. So we're going to finish this nail with a solid color. And before we do, we're going to go back to our protein bond one more time. Opposite your hands, teal, magenta, opposite. Okay. Yes, I think you're probably onto something with the opposite. So let's see. I've got the teal on this one. I'm seeing lots of teals. So all right, yeah, okay. Maybe we'll do the teal. Teal's my favorite color. So all right, so we're going to go through with one more coat of our protein bond, and this is going to again give us a really nice tacky surface for our gel polish or our cream clay or whatever else you may be putting over the surface of this. Just going to give that nail a really great tacky surface. All right, you guys. Okay, I'm going to change it up here. Do you want to see the teal or do you want to see magenta and an art design? Now I got to mix it up for you guys a little bit. So let me know. Glitter with the teal or magenta and an art design. All right, so in the meantime, while you guys are letting me know about that, I'm going to show you just really quickly how I would normally put on the cream clays. Normally, I like to use that other end of my spatula. So this is the spatula end and the brush on the other end. And I'm trying to see all the comments here. But you guys, it sounds like a lot of you still want the teal. So maybe we'll just stick to the teal today. We'll do an art design another day. So to apply our cream clays, like I was saying, I do like to use the brush from the brush and spatula combo. I really like the shape of this. I'm going to show you compared to a couple of our other gel brushes. Let's see here. So compared to a couple of our other gel brushes, this is, I always call it kind of the short squatty brush. So let me show you here. So this one here is our dual-ended brush and spatula. Our YNI Master Gel Brush is a little bit longer and a little bit more tapered to a point. And then we also have our Pro Gel Sculptor, which is also a little bit longer. It's almost the same width as our dual-ended brush and spatula, but it is a little bit longer. So because of the consistency of the cream clays, I do like the shorter, like I said, I call it the squatty brush. So the shorter squatty brush, I feel like works really well with the cream clays. And it sounds like some people are asking, did I put a base coat on? When I'm working on the tips on our full cover nails, you have options, you guys. You can do either a coat of a base gel, you can do a coat of the fiber gel, you can a lot of different options here, but honestly, I'm gonna do 2 coats of our cream clay, and then I'm also gonna top coat this. And so for me, that's gonna give my nail enough strength and durability so that I don't necessarily need an extra layer of anything else underneath. And sometimes I find that if I do too much as a base layer, then it can get a little bit thick. So for me personally, I don't think I need anything else under these because like I said, they're gonna be fairly sturdy. And for how I wear them and how I handle my nails, and I know a good nail tech in case I break it. Just kidding, you guys. But I think for on myself, I don't necessarily need that extra structure or durability underneath. But if you do, go ahead and add another coat of, like I said, either the manicure base coat. So the manicure base coat, you can use the regular manicure in the jar, you can use the fiber gel. All of those will be a great option to give you a little bit more durability. But otherwise, all I did was applied a coat of Protein Bond, and Protein Bond doesn't need to be cured. It just will air dry on the nail. So I've got a nice sticky surface on my nail here. And somebody's asking, what color is this? This is Tackle from our Cream Clay collection. And let me come in here a little bit closer. Now, when I'm working with the cream clays, sometimes I like to have one of our little art palettes here, just in case I need to clean out my brush or if maybe if there's like a little piece of lint or something on my brush. It's always nice to have that extra tile there just in case. And with the cream clays, I'm going to scoop up a good amount of this. Now, you're going to think that it's too much. So I have kind of a little pearl right on the end of my brush. I'm gonna use what I need, and then if I don't need this, I'm gonna wipe off the extra. But as I brush this on, I'm not really trying to be very heavy-handed, but I'm not floating that either. So a little pressure, but not a lot. So just kind of gliding over the surface. And I think by doing more of that gliding technique, that's how you're gonna get a little bit more of a smooth application. If you say, I'm just gonna show you guys this. If you use too much pressure, you're probably going to wipe off too much of that color, and then you're going to get kind of like a streaky look to it. So the more you're able to just kind of smooth that product on there, you guys, if you're into cake decorating or anything, it's like icing a cake, just a smooth pressure over the whole nail. And then we're going to come right into our cuticle area. And that's one of the other reasons that I love this brush because it's got that nice rounded um, rounded edge to it. So I feel like that rounded edge gets right up into that cuticle area and nice and easily. So this way I get right up in there and I don't have to use my liner brush or anything to touch up. Now, if you feel like you need to, you can go through and touch up with your liner brush. Well, let me show you how I would do that in just a second here. But did you see how I had that little bit of extra gel coming off the end? And I just scooched that right off the end. I can either wipe that back onto my tile, or if you're able to in your state, you can pop that back into the container, but it's better to just clean that off onto your tile. This way I'm getting that really nice smooth finish on that whole surface. Now, if I needed to get a little bit closer into that cuticle area, I could grab either my liner brush or I even have my micro detailer brush here. I could take a little bit more of that gel and get right up into that cuticle area. Now, I don't really need to, but I do want to show you guys that just in case if you're having a little challenge getting your product and getting your color all the way up into that cuticle area, you can use that liner brush. Now, I'm just pulling my cuticle back just a little bit there because now that I'm seeing this, I think I can get just a little bit closer right up in there. All right, I think we're good there. At this point, I do need to cure this, so I can use either my touch cure light. If I were just doing one hand, I could use my touch, or just one nail. I could use that touch cure light and freeze that into place. If you're doing a full set of this, I would definitely go into the UV LED light because that way you're going to be able to get that whole hand in there and you're not going to have to worry about doing one nail at a time. Now, I don't know if you guys really noticed this or not, but when I was using the cream clays, you could see that on my nail, it wasn't moving. It's not like a regular gel polish where it can maybe kind of self-level a little bit or kind of move or run down the sides or anything like that. The cream clays have that thicker consistency, so it's really going to stay where you put it. It's not going to run and it's not going to flow. So that's one of my favorite things about this gel because it's really easy to use and it goes on super smooth and easy. So I had that in there probably about 30 seconds or so. We'll come back and we'll do our second coat. Come back in here. So the second coat is what's going to give you that really great coverage. You can see I've got pretty good coverage on here, but there's a couple areas where maybe it looks a little bit more sheer. But when you brush on that second coat, that's going to give you that really good full coverage. And notice that as I work, I'm still using just very, very light pressure. I'm not really putting a lot of pressure on here, but I'm not floating over it like I would use like a sculpting gel. So just brushing through, almost kind of feathering, almost a feathering feel. And just blending all the way from side to side. And then again, if I needed to, if there was that little bit of extra at my free edge, I can clean that off. We'll go ahead back into our light for another 30 seconds. And then we can go ahead and top coat. So you guys, I know that if you've been with us for a while, you know what time it is, so go ahead and start our top coat chant in the chat. If you're new to our channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, get all of our free education, join our community, and then you can do our top coat chant in the chat. So at this point, I'm going to use my manicure top coat. Now, could you use your other top coats? Could you use your ultimate finish? Absolutely. Ultimate finish is going to work great. You could use the matte, the tack-free matte top coat. You could use even the stain-resistant top coat. If you've got enough structure where your natural or where that tip and that enhancement aren't going to flex and bend, the stain-resistant top coat will work really good over that. But because I'm using a fairly flexible tip, I'm using a soft gel, I do tend to like to stick to the manicure top because manicure is a soft gel. And also if you're going to be soaking off, then manicure top coat is going to soak off as well. So we're just going to apply a nice thin even layer of our manicure top over the whole nail. And this is going to cure in the light for a full 60 seconds. Now, a lot of times when I do my demos, I use the ultimate finish and I just freeze it into place and I cure that for about 30 seconds so that you guys can see the finished look. But for today, I am going to make sure my timer's set at 60. I am going to set this and cure this for a full 60 seconds because I do want you guys to see that when we're using the manicure top coat, this does have a tacky finish once it's cured. So this you do have to make sure that you're cleansing. And I can grab with my other hand. We're going to use our manicure cleanser to clean off that tacky surface. Again, we're not using our onto the next polish remover because that has acetone in it. We're also not using our swipe because that also has acetone to it. So when I'm using a soft gel top coat, I do want to make sure that I'm using the manicure cleanser to remove that tacky surface. This way, we're going to ensure that the nail is going to have a really bright, high shine finish. And anything that has acetone, if it's overused, or if you really maybe scrubbed on the nail with it, then that can start to kind of dull the surface of it and not leave you with as high shine of a finish. So again, we're going to grab our manicure cleanser, take a little bit of that onto our lint-free wipe, cleanse all the way around. Now, you guys, when I cleanse the nail, notice that I start with the edge of my wipe at the back edge of the nail, and I pull that forward. I can kind of scrub down here a little bit, but then I'll fold that over and I'll give it a second cleanse. The reason that I do that is because, let me grab another clean wipe here. If you come in and you start all the way back here and you scrub all the way back onto that finger, what you're really doing is pushing that tacky surface that we're trying to cleanse off, you're pushing that back up onto the skin. That tacky surface is still basically uncured gel. So by pushing that uncured gel up onto the skin, that's again making contact with our skin, and we don't want to get that chemical onto the skin. So that's why I start here, I pull forward, and then I can kind of scrub down here, but then fold that wipe over and then cleanse it one more time just to make sure that you get all of that residue off of the nail. So one more time, just making sure I get all of that cleansed off the nail. Now at this point, you shouldn't really have to do any filing or anything around the edges, but if maybe you feel a little bit of a sharp edge under there, grab that 180 buffer again, and you can just gently come right around those edges. Or if maybe there's an edge where you need to file, hit it with that file on the file side, and make sure you've got nice smooth edges all the way around. By filing or buffing these edges at this point, it's not going to break the seal or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to chip or peel off as long as you have completely polished properly, prepped properly, applied your protein bond properly. Everything is going to adhere just fine. Now, what do we do at the end of our service? I know you guys have already done the top coat chant, but the last thing, and I tend to forget to do this on our trainer hands, but on a real person, always make sure that you're finishing the nails with the rose oil. This is a great cuticle oil, and you guys, you can see how dry my skin is from all that cleansing? I do want to make sure that I'm replacing that moisture and keeping my natural nails hydrated, keeping my skin hydrated, keeping that hyponychium underneath that nail hydrated, and keeping everything nice and flexible. We're going to rub that in, make sure that is nice and hydrated, and we've got our beautiful, quick and easy full cover tip application. All right, you guys, make sure one more time that you hit that subscribe button, join our community. If you enjoyed our demo today, make sure to come back and join us again. We're usually here on YouTube, usually 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But set your notifications so that you can always come back and join us. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody.